Akeeba Backup is a product of Nicholas Dinosopoulos. It's taken me 3 years to learn how to say Nicholas's name, so I'm going to say it again for the video, Nicholas Dinosopoulos. So if you're watching this, Nicholas, at some point in the future, I have said it correct twice. Nicholas is a Greek guy, and also a great guy, and he has created the #1 solution in the Joomla world for doing backups. Can I quickly ask who already uses Akeeba Backup? Okay, cool. So this was built as Akeeba Backup for beginners. Maybe I'm going to think on my feet a little bit and change it to Akeeba Backup for professionals. Bit of background history about why Akeeba Backup was created. It was not created to make backups. That was a side issue. Akeeba Backup, under its original name, Joomla Pack, was created as a way for Nicholas to transfer the sites that he was building on his local computer to the client's live server. That's what it was created for, #1. And #2, which is what a lot of people use it for, is to create their own versions of Joomla. So if you've been enthused by Peter's session on Advanced Module Manager, and you're going to get enthused by Akeeba Backup and my session tomorrow about JCE, you always install that on your client sites. What you do is you use Akeeba Backup to do a custom installation of Joomla.
And that's one of the main features that you can do with it that people don't necessarily always do. So Akeeba Backup comes in 2 different versions. There is Akeeba Core, which is free of charge, and there's Akeeba Professional, which is €40 a year, and that's the price to you for the year, not per site. So if you install it on 1 million websites, that's absolutely fine. There's basic rules, difference between the 2 products. Akeeba Core will do all your backups. You can automate things. What you can do with Professional, though, is you can take it to the next level. We'll just have a quick look at some of the differences. I'm working on the website that I built yesterday in our workshop. And I've got Akeeba installed. This is
Akeeba Backup Core, the free version. You have various screens, various big buttons. One of the interesting things about doing a backup is it's very much dependent on your web host. Yeah, your web host has timings issues, it has performance issues, and the real magic of Akeeba is stuff you never see. There's a configuration wizard here, which I'm just going to run now, and what this is doing is it's going through the server, it's working out the best settings for Akeeba Backup to work with your server. What those settings are, who the heck knows? Yeah, that's the magic of it, that's where the code behind it is doing it. It works out execution times, how big a chunk it can work with, stuff like that. And it really is, it's not a case of your server is bad or your server is good, it's just they're all different. It's just finishing off right now. So you really only have to do this once when you've installed Akeeba Backup. So it's actually finished now.
You have a configuration screen, as you do with most things. I have a rule for websites, and it says, if I don't tell you to touch it, don't.
Because we often come to a screen like this and go, what am I supposed to put here? Oh, I haven't got a clue. I don't understand what multi-part file system scanner engine is.
Well, the reality is, you don't need to know what it is because the default settings are fine. The only reason you would ever need to change it is if someone's telling you to change it.
And one of the things that makes Akeeba Backup
absolutely unique of all the extensions I've ever seen in the Joomla world is this. Just on his website, I go to Docs, and click on the Start Reading the User Guide.
Look how big his user guide is.
Yeah, he covers absolutely everything you could ever need to know. And everything that you don't need to know as well. So it's all there. Absolutely everything is there. It's one of the things that makes Nicholas unique. And I always think that if the developer is going to spend as much time as that writing documentation is a sign of the quality of the product because it shows that he really cares about what it is that he's producing.
So let's just have a quick look at some of the options here. The main one that we have right here is the backup archive name. You can see by default it's going to write the site, the host name, the date and the time. And you can of course tweak that as you wish. But that's quite good. It's quite useful, especially if you're backing up loads of sites. You don't end up with a load of backups all called backup.zip, or on your website and you never know, on your home server, and you never know what to use. We've got a few different options. You can pop open. Again, this is all stuff that's going to be configured automatically. This next one, quota management, is something that's really clever.
By default, it's not enabled. The count quota is enabled and the size quota isn't. What it's going to do, if I enable the count quota, let me just hover over for the tooltip, it will look, when it's doing the backup, it will look at your old backups that are already on the server and remove them if they're above a certain age. And the same you can do if you can remove them if they're above a certain size. Because one thing that often happens is people do loads of backups, and they keep doing their backups and their backups and their backups, and then they run out of disk space on their hosting accounts.
Yeah, so this will prevent this happening for you. You can either set it by size or by limit, so you're not keeping a lot of backups filling up your disk space.
You can also do, let me go back to the control panel.
And scroll down.
It may well be that on your website, you've got a huge folder full of videos.
Yeah. You've got those backed up already. Yeah, they're sitting on your local computer. That never changes. They're there for the whole year. You don't want to include those every single time you do a backup of your website. It's going to be huge. It's not necessary. What you can do is you can click on this icon here to do a files and directory exclusion. You can navigate through, so it'll probably be images, and I'm going to say exclude that directory.
Yeah, and as simple as that, it won't include it for the backup. Or you could even go a little bit further. Instead of it being an actual directory, you can exclude an individual file. Now, one thing I should point out, this part of the user interface isn't necessarily the greatest bit. You can see there's some here already that are marked red. They're excluded by default because you actually don't need those. You don't want those when you're restoring. And that's fine. But I've actually just excluded something inside the images folder, which is here, but it's not showing anything on this screen because it's excluding stuff on the next level down. So what you can do is you can just click on this list all exclusions, and it will actually give the list there. And at this point, you can actually remove that one from the exclusion list. So you can work like that. So you can do file and directory exclusions. Something else you can do is database tables exclusions. Why would you want to exclude some database tables? Well, you can see it's already not backing up these particular ones, which are for the Smart Search Finder, because they're dynamically generated and you wouldn't actually want to back those up. And there's a few others, like the session table, that you don't want to back up. But you may have a website where you've also installed, for example, PHPV, which is a MySQL-based forum. And you've only got one database from your web host. So it's all in the same database.
You don't want that to get mixed up with your website backup. You want to deal with that separately. So you can just click on that one, green button there, exclude non-core tables. So that's not going to do any of the Joomla stuff. Or you can actually just individually go in and find all the PHP tables and just say don't back those ones up as well. So if you've installed a lot of extra stuff, you can remove certain bits. I'll just put those back. Okay. So that's, you notice here we've got default backup profile. We can create multiple profiles. A profile is a set of saved settings. Yeah? So a saved setting could be not including those big files, the media files. You can call that one your daily backup, and you can do another one, say, call it your everything backup. And so you've got different profiles set. So I'm just going to do a quick backup now.
Can I just ask something about the exclusion?
Yep.
My mind's just sort of leaping forward, thinking back to do a full site restore. Does that exclusion thing work by always saving a complete set, but only kind of backing up on top of the complete set files, the ones that you haven't excluded? Do you know what I mean? Like what I'm wondering is how does the system know
Oh, because you switch profile. If I created another profile called full backup, I would just have to switch profiles here to another one and do it that way. That's how the system knows. It just goes, use this set of settings or use this set of settings.
Okay, so let me just quickly do a backup.
Now, one of the things that I was saying is, of course,
one of the things that's really interesting about backups is a lot of people say to me, that's right, my web host does a backup. Yeah? I used to be a web host. I used to do backups. They weren't for your benefit, they were for my benefit if the hard disk drive crashed. Yeah? They weren't, if you contacted me and said, Brian, I've made a mistake on my website, I've wiped this file, this folder, or something, quite often it wouldn't actually be possible for me to recover that individual folder, because I can only recover the whole disk. Yeah, so I've got a backup that's for my emergency, not for your emergency. Yeah? Even if your web host offers you individual website backups,
it's still your website, it's your responsibility to do the backup. Yeah, don't rely on somebody else. Secondly, backups are your insurance policy.
What happens if your web host goes bust? If the backup is on the web host's server, you've got no backup. If the backup's been copied onto your site, you've got the backup, you can go take it and reinstall it somewhere else. So that's the whole point about backups. They're there for insurance. Yeah? It's like having a set of spare keys made for your house. Yeah, you have 5 sets of spare keys in case you lose yours. Where do you keep them? In your kitchen drawer. Not much use, is it? If you can't get into the house, you can't get the spare keys. It's the same with backups. You need to keep them at a friend's house. Yeah, someone nice and safe that you can actually access them. So when you've done the backups, you can see you get a database record. There's 2 parts to the database record. This is an older backup that I did. It actually marks it as being obsolete because of the time, but you also see there's no file there because I've actually removed the file off the server. But it's kept a record of the backup so I can check back at some future date and confirm that either I or my colleague has done the backups. So I'm just going to download this backup to my computer. It's done that. I'm actually working on a local host computer, but I would normally do this with FTP. Australia. Just making sure I'm actually removing the correct site.
So this is the folder for the site. I'm just going to wipe it. Okay, it's gone. And our website's gone. Yeah, disaster. Yeah, no, let's just put it back together. So let me go to my downloads, grab the backup, FTP it upload, and then you need another product from Nicholas which is free of charge called Kickstart. You take the Kickstart and you put that on your web space as well. And now when you go to your website, you can see you've got 2 files. You've got the Kickstart and the backup file. So if I open the Kickstart file, this is your warnings and your messages and your instructions. Pretty much confirms everything there. Just hit start. What it's doing now is unextracting everything. So Kickstart is just an unextractor.
So it's done that, and it now says run the installer. So the installer is part of that backup that you created. So it's kind of similar to the options that you get in the Joomla installer, just a different interface. Click next. It's going to ask you for the database details. In my case, they haven't changed. So, in fact, just to make it change, I'll put it in a brand new database. It's performing the restoration. That's done. Click next. Yeah, all of that's fine. Yep.
You just changed the database name. So is it creating a database?
Akeeba isn't doing that. A lot of your web servers, some web servers allow the user to create databases on the fly. Right? It's not necessarily that common. It is on a local host, so I could do that. Yeah. Okay, you mean why couldn't I just copy the files back? I'd wipe the database.
had no database either. Files are no good without a database. That's a simple answer. Imagine it was going to a different physical server. The file paths, the actual physical path on the server might be different as well.
This is all done. This is all done. Remove the installation directory. Click OK. There we are. We're back.
Yeah, so that's disaster recovery from a completely trashed hard drive. Yeah, taken my backup, reinstalled it on a completely new site.
So that's where Akeeba Backup becomes really strong. Yeah, how quick and easy it is for you to restore it. So if you just have a backup of files, maybe done through FTP, and a database maybe dumped through phpMyAdmin or something, to actually rebuild it, if you've got absolute path changes, you've got all sorts of other issues, it's not going to work. Some of those tables that it was automatically not backing up, if you try, like the sessions table, if you try and restore a sessions table, you'll get an error message on your screen about sessions being crashed and various other stuff like that. So it actually makes the whole process foolproof. Yeah?
Have you seen machine issues with it?
No. It won't make it, it's up to your server. It's doing the installation exactly the same way as you would do a Joomla installation.
Yep. So, I mean, that's the fundamentals of, I'm just click clean up, that's the fundamentals of Akeeba Backup Core.
Now, one of the things, of course, you want to do is make sure that you're actually doing your backups on a regular basis. Yeah, there is no point if you forget to do the backup. And if you're anything like me, you do forget to do the backup, and you kind of remember, oh, I'm going to a Joomla day, I'm going to be away from the country, I better do a backup. And then you do that, but the rest of the time you don't bother, because you forget. So with Akeeba Backup Core, you can do timed backups. Let me go log back in again.
With the core version, in other words, the free version, you can only do something called a front-end backup. Yeah? So that's technically, for those of you who know what cron jobs are, which are server-based stuff, you can't do that with the core version. You can do a front-end backup, which is a URL-based system. So that's typically, you need something to issue that URL, that special URL, at a special time. Not many people that offer that as a service, but there is one called webcron.org.
This is their website. They are a company in France, I believe. Interestingly, some of you may recognise immediately that's a Joomla website, so it's quite good. They like Joomla too. And one of the things they do is they offer a service and they can issue the cron jobs, so the timed backups for you to take place at certain times. So how much does it cost you to do a backup? To do a cron, a timed issue? Really expensive. For €1, which is about $1, it'll do
10,000.
Yeah. So not exactly a lot of money. How many years of backups is 10,000 crons if you do it on a daily basis? Yeah, for €1, it's nothing. Yeah. So you can use the webcron system to automate your backups.
And that's really good and it's really powerful. There's only one problem with doing backups this way, that the backup file itself is still on the web server. Yeah, the key is still in the kitchen drawer. So you do still need to remember to actually go in and download the backups to your own computer or somewhere safe. So that's the downside of this system, but it does mean that Akeeba Backup is core, which is free, and this cron job system is basically free. Instead, you do have the alternative, and you can go for the Akeeba Backup Professional version. And somewhere here I have the professional version installed. Okay, so on this Joomla 3 site, I had the professional version installed, so just to prove that Akeeba Backup 1 version works on both. The core version starts to look pretty much the same. Where it differs, specifically, is you've got the scheduling and you've got a couple of different methods of doing server-based cron jobs, which are much more reliable. You don't have to use the third-party web cron. You just go to your web host and use their own built-in cron service. But again, I said that the cron itself, the backup is still taking place on your server, so we need to fix that. We need to back it up somewhere else. So if I go into the, no, wrong one. If I go into the configuration, there we are. Under the data processing engine, these are all the options that are available to you to what it's going to do with that backup once it's done the backup. So instead of taking it off and storing it on the server, you can send it to Microsoft Azure, Boxnet, Rackspace, Dropbox, send it to an email address, to a remote FTP server, to Google Storage, to Amazon S3, to SugarSync, whatever it is that you want to use. Yeah, so the backup performs exactly as you would expect it to do, exactly as you've seen me do a backup. But instead of the file sitting on your web server, it goes and sits on the remote site.
Does the email version break it into smaller chunks?
Yeah, there's a configuration option once you set it. Let's look, send by email, configure.
That's not an option there, but it is an option elsewhere. Yeah. So I probably wouldn't recommend doing the send by email. You'd have to break it up into a lot of chunks. I guess if you're using Gmail as your email service, then it could cope with a bigger amount, but you might get your web host might have limits on the size of an email that could get sent. Personally, depending on my client site, I use either Amazon S3 or Dropbox.
The Dropbox system is great because it goes off automatically onto the cloud, and then it will also back itself up onto my laptop when I log in. So every day when I've been switching on my computer here, it's been syncing another copy onto my local machine, which is great. So you've got copies in two places, both on Dropbox in the cloud and on your computer, and maybe more people that you've shared the Dropbox folder with. The Amazon S3 one is a little bit more powerful, and you can actually do a restore directly from the cloud.
Yeah, which you can't do with any of the other systems at the moment. So that's, yes. Yeah, what you could do is you'd have multiple profiles. Yeah, there's multiple profiles. Profile 1 would be, let's say, Dropbox. Profile 2 would be S3, and issue cron jobs to perform them at different times, or manual ones at different times. Now, one thing that you may have noticed, we have these nice when you hover over the tooltips, and there's quite a lot of information there, and it does stay there for a while. Yeah? It's not like one of those that disappears as soon as you move your mouse. Yeah.
Yeah. I'll come to it. Okay. So you've got all that. You've got all your profile stuff. You've got the tooltips. When I've configured it all,
let me go back to my control panel.
Profile management.
So you can see I have two profiles here. I can export that profile. It downloads a simple text file, and I can now use that profile on any other Joomla website that I've got using Akeeba, because I just go and I click on choose file, select it, and import.
Okay, so in other words, you spend the time once on one of your servers creating all those multiple profiles, one profile, whatever it is you want, export it, import it into something else. Okay, now there's a session later on, it's talking about becoming involved in the Joomla community, and one of the key things about getting involved in Joomla is about giving feedback. You know, whether that's core or whether it's extensions. Now that feature exists because I begged Nicholas to do it. Yeah, personally, because JCE does the same thing, and I went, that's really cool. Nicholas, can you do that? Yeah, Nicholas's typical response is no, and this is why. And I go, but it's a really good idea, Nicholas. And then, no, it can't be done. And then 2 days later, there's a new release with that feature. So if everyone sits there going, can you do it? You know, but doesn't ask the question, it doesn't get done. I asked, it got done. So you do have that feature. Now, I said before about using Akeeba Backup for building your site locally on your own test server or your local host on your own laptop, and then installing it on the client's websites. So if you're using the standard version, all you would do is you take that backup file and upload it with the Kickstart file like you saw me do to restore it on this one onto the client server. But with the professional version, you've got something called Site Transfer Wizard. And what you do with the Site Transfer Wizard is, I'll just use the existing profile, it will literally do the backup on this site, on this server, take the FTP connections that I've just given it to the new server, the client server, and go server to server. So I don't need to take the files down to my computer. I might have a lousy internet connection. It's a huge site. I don't want to download a gigabyte of files and then upload a gigabyte of files. It takes it server directly to to the new server, and then automatically loads the installer on the new site, and you go away and you're installed. Pretty cool. You can transfer sites amazingly quickly. I was trying to set it up a little bit earlier, but there's a port that's blocked here, so I can't actually use it. But that's just because we're at the university. Yep.
Databases. Does it create a database, or you have to have the database exactly the same name and now it's
So the question is, does it create the database? No, because that's part of, unless that server allows that permission. But you don't need the same name, because what happens when you do the restore, if it's on a different server address to the one that the backup was done, Akeeba pops up and says, oh, in fact, let me do it. Okay. Let's take a client's backup that's on my Dropbox accounts. Website, site 2. There we are. And let me just go in and create a database for you.
You're using Kickstart.
Yeah.
I was asking about the site transfer.
It's the same part. You'll see, I'm using the Kickstart to show you what you're talking about. Right? Let me just add the database, hold on. So this is on a... So the way it works is straight after... So let me just extract this. So when you do the Site Transfer Wizard, after it's copied the files across, it loads up the new server, does the extraction automatically for you, yeah, and then loads the installer. And click Next.
So it automatically puts in the file in there as well.
Yeah. It doesn't, technically it's doing a different way, but the same idea. And you can see that warning message. So it's detected that this site that I'm now restoring it onto a completely different server. So it's prompted me on that, and it says, would you like to clear the field so that you can type in the new database connection? So in this case I'm going to say yes. Put in the new database server. Oops. This is a bigger site. Okay. Excuse me, I've got sniffles. And there you are. It's moved it across. Yeah? So it does the whole thing. It automatically detected there's a different site.
It uses the same install. That was the thing.
Excuse me. Yeah, it does. It uses the same installer, but it's intelligent enough to know when it's on a different thing, so it prompts you for all of that. So that's the Site Transfer Wizard. Let me go back in. Where am I? Oh, excuse me. I've got the sniffles now.
it really bashed the keys, doesn't it? So you've got the site transfer wizard, you've got the scheduling. I showed you about the file and directory exclusions and the database table exclusions. You can even go further than that.
With the professional version, you can actually tell it to back up other databases that are on the server as well.
Yeah? So you might have a PHP installation on a different folder, in a different database, and choose to back it up and include it. And you might have PHP, so you can actually reinstall those tables as well, and back up those as well. And you can also set it to include what's called here off-site directories. Yeah, so what's an off-site directory? Sometimes you're using, you've got files that are being served from above the htdocs folder. It will include those as well in the backup. You can also tell it to exclude extensions based on which extension it is with filters, and as Peter started to suggest about using regexes, it's very complicated. I'm not going to try and look at it, but you can do some very complex stuff with regular expressions.
And there's also an option in this version to just back up changed files and things like that, but that does make the restoration a little bit harder, because obviously you've got to have a master backup and then restore a changed files on top of that.
Does the same apply for new files that are added? For example, documents, PDFs, and things?
What about them?
Well, can you program it to only back up new stuff?
Yes, that's just what I was saying. That's an incremental backup. You can do that. I say the problem with that is when you do your restoration, you've got a partial backup. So you have to restore the complete one, and then you restore the partial on top of that as well. Unless you have issues with the time things take or the disk space that you've got, my recommendation is you never do that. You always do a complete backup. Yeah, the time saved is not worth it. One final thing, and then come over to you.
We often hear about bugs in software, whether that's things not working or about there being security updates and stuff like that. Akeeba Backup, both the standard and the professional version, always checks to make sure that you are running the current version. And if you're not running the current version, it tells you you're not running the current version, and you click that button and then you've got the current version. Yeah, so there's never any excuse for anyone ever not to know that they're out of date. Yeah? And that's really, really important. I can't stress that enough.
What if you have scheduled backups? You set up the controls. Can you set it up so that it will email you to let you know when you have to upgrade?
Yeah. Oh, that site's actually crashed.
Okay. So this is the site that I just restored, but I'm actually trying to go onto the live site.
And one of the things that it does, it's really quite nice here.
If I can get it to load. Manage backups. So this site is set to do backups every day, and the backups are done to Dropbox.
And you can see here the history of all the backups that have been performed. Command line backup on the 19th of January, 24 minutes past midnight. It's a remote backup. It's a full site backup type. It's using my profile 4, because I've got lots of profiles on this site. That's how big. And if I go manage remotely stored files, which I'm not going to click on now, that will pop up into my Dropbox folder. And I could download it. If I was using Amazon S3, then I could actually it allows you to do more, and there's actually a restore button from there as well. So you can actually restore directly from the cloud. Yep.
Okay. Two questions. Number one, if you're using FTP or external backup, does it check to see if there's any room left in the box before it tries to transfer the file across?
How could it?
So if it happens, it just goes across and that's it. As far as it's concerned, there's no signal.
It can give an error message and can tell you there's been a fail, but it can't test in advance to see how big.
So if there is an error message, can you send you an email saying that there was an error FTPing the backup?
No. As far as I'm aware.
The cron job you can set up the cron job with an email address and then you send the email with 8 errors.
You can do that. It depends on what type of error on the FTP thing, though, because that. Yeah, that you definitely would do it if the cron doesn't perform, but it depends on where it spits the FTP error out. I'm not sure if you could ever get that to come back. Yeah.
Break up that backup to go to data files or Dropbox, like instead of breaking up certain files or
No, it depends. You do need to break it up into smallish amounts, dependent on whether it's Dropbox or Amazon, because of the limitations those systems have about how quickly you can transfer files. Yeah, I think in this case you can see it was 66 meg, and that's fine. I think I've got another site which does had to break it at 100 meg. Yeah, and it does that automatically. I set that as my part size, and it creates multiple parts to the backup. Yeah.
Just going to that gentleman's question, I find with really good error messages on file, just comes through the cron, but the error message clearly comes from Akeeba Professional.
Yeah, it's from the log, but you'd have.
The cron failed and a few other things, so I quite agree with that.
Okay. Yeah.
Sort of same question there. Dropbox, just say it's got a Dropbox, does it is it on your server first, once it's 100% backed up, then instead of Dropbox?
Yeah. Yeah. So it does the backup. Technically what happens, exactly what you says, it does the backup onto your server, then transfers the backup to Dropbox and removes it from your server. Yeah, so that your server space isn't you need to have enough space on your server to perform the backup, plus a little bit, and then it gets transferred and removed. Yeah, I think with the Amazon S3 there's an experimental version which if you take it down to 10 meg chunks it will do it live, but you're playing with fire a bit there. Yeah.
Brian, you said about off-site directories include
Yeah.
versions. Would that be, for example, in RS firewall?
Yeah, exactly.
Move the
Yeah,
file?
exactly. Yeah, it's exactly the sort of thing. I think the restoration onto another server is a little bit tricky then, but restoring onto the same server is definitely not a problem.
Yeah, anybody else before I finish? All I can say is Nicholas is a great guy. He's really friendly, he's really nice. I'm wearing the baseball cap in his honour because he always does the presentations wearing his baseball cap. He very kindly is a sponsor of the event here, and he's offered a 25% discount on any of his products, because he does have other ones, to anybody. That's the discount code JDA U12, and that's valid until February, or until the end of February. Okay, thank you very much.